Up next, we have another international equity fund, which is VXUS, the Vanguard Total International Stock ETF. This fund tracks the performance of the FTSE Global All Cap EXUS Index, and this provides investors with exposure to 98% of the entire investable market cap of the global stock market, excluding the United States. So this is going to be strictly international exposure. Now, how this differs from something like VEA, for example, the Emerging Markets Fund that we looked at earlier, is that this fund provides you with exposure to both developed and emerging global markets, whereas the previous fund was strictly developed markets. Emerging markets are areas that are transitioning from developing nations to a developed nation, and one example of that would be Brazil as a country which is an emerging market. So there is a little bit more risk in those markets, but there's also a greater return potential. So this is going to be capturing both emerging and developed markets, whereas prior that fund was strictly developed markets. There's also funds that are specific to emerging markets if you wanted to have a more aggressive international exposure. Taking a look at the expense ratio, that comes in at 0.08%, so it is a little bit higher than the funds that we looked at before, but not necessarily high compared to the overall industry average. And if you scroll down here, it actually will show you how that compares to the industry average. So that is coming in at 10% roughly of the industry average for similar funds, which is 0.88%. If we look here at the overall portfolio composition, we can see that this has a total of 8,667 individual holdings, and we can also see that the valuation trades lower here for international equities. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people like to diversify into international markets, is because you don't often see the same valuation as you do in the US equities market. The PE ratio is at 15.7 on average, and the price to book ratio is a 1.8x. In terms of the total invested here, the net assets for this fund at the end of August was $453.3 billion. So this is a very popular fund investment offered by Vanguard. If we take a look here at the overall exposure, we can see that 25.7% of this is in emerging markets, and then 40.4% is in Europe, 26.3% is the Pacific region, North America is 7.2%, Middle East is 0.4%, and then a very small amount going into the other regions, not a measurable amount. And if we take a look here at the largest markets, we can see here that Japan once again represents the largest portion, followed by the United Kingdom, and then we have Canada, China, India, France, and so forth in terms of the largest exposures for particular countries. Taking a look at the individual holdings, we can see the largest component of this portfolio is the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company at 2.15%, and you'll also see a couple of other names that many will recognize. For example, we have Tencent, Nestle, Samsung Electronics, AstraZeneca, SAP, etc. So this fund would be good for someone who's looking for that international exposure, but they're looking to be a bit more aggressive than strictly investing in the developed markets. So this would be one that you may want to consider for your overall portfolio.